Acting Deputy President, I move to take note of that explanation.
You have the call.
Sometimes I worry that I do sound like a broken record in here, but that's actually not my fault. It's the fault of Defence and the Minister for not getting stuff done. The Inspector General of the Australian Defence Force is Defence's legal oversight system. They are the agency that is supposed to make sure that when veterans are placed under investigation, they get a fair go. But that hasn't happened. I know it and the veterans know it. I've known about problems with the IGADF for years. There are so many cases of weaponised administration of Defence members over the years. The chain of command has misused and abused the legal processes to target members, and the IGADF signed off on the abuses when apparently still reviewing the cases. It was only after lawyers, often acting pro bono, managed to have the IGADF reviews reviewed that the cases were found to be an abusive process and an attack on the ADF victims. What happened to the IGADF officers who did the initial reviews and found there was nothing to see here? Yeah, promoted and given medals. What's new? And what about current IGADF investigations into what is clearly systemic abuse? They drag on with no end in sight, and the victims simply expect that it will be just another nothing to see here outcome. And what about the former ADF lawyer who tried to complain about the Defence abuse response process? The fact-finding didn't speak to any witnesses, ignored relevant evidence and decided this lawyer was lying based on irrelevant material. Last year I wrote to the Attorney General requesting an urgent audit for 3 reasons. Firstly, the Office of the IGADF had never been audited, not once, in the 20 years since its establishment. Secondly, the Office of the IGADF has increased its staff by 85% at all at taxpayers' expense. Third and finally, the IGADF have been called out by the Royal Commission on their poor leadership and lack of accountability and transparency on numerous occasions over the last 3 years. Even though the IGADF and the Australian National Audit are separate agencies and are supposed to be independent and impartial, despite this, the Secretary of Defence, Greg Moriarty, met with the IGADF to discuss the scope of a potential audit. My, not so independent anymore, are we? Naughty, naughty. In September last year, Justice Duncan Kerr was commissioned to review the Office of the Inspector General of the Australian Defence Force. This review was handed down to the Secretary and the Chief of Defence Force 5 months ago, but none of us has yet seen it. I asked former Senator Rex Patrick to get an FOI organised, but the Minister's office say they won't comply because they are still considering it. That's the report. This is offensive to the objectives of the Act, and Australians paid for this report, and it concerns matters of public interest, let alone veterans' lives that are on the line. It sounds like the report probably reflects what veterans have been telling me for years, that the IGADF is broken, and in my opinion, the way it operates is hurting veterans and in some cases leading them to take their own lives. The FOI has been appealed to the Information Commissioner, but sadly that could take years. But watch this space, because I'm not going away. We're thinking about having it shifted to the Australian Review Tribunal. I got another letter from Mr Miles last week. Apparently the government needs more time to complete consultations as part of this consideration to finalise the government response. That's government speak for, hello, we're working on the spin here. I mean, seriously, it took 3 months to do the 20-year review but they are still sitting on it 5 months later. What an absolute joke. Diggers have put their lives on the line for this country only for the IGADF to protect the top brass and not them. Remember, it was the IGADF report by Paul Brereton that gave the senior commander free pass on their role in the alleged war crimes in Afghanistan, a free pass, that's right. The role of the IGADF is very important, as they say on their website, and I quote, oversee the quality and fairness of Australia's military justice system, end quote. But the IGADF's importance relies on the job being done fairly, impartially and independently. The Minister needs to release this report right now. And when he has done that, he should make the IGADF an independent agency, completely independent from Defence, because I'm sure that's what one of the recommendations that's going to come out of the Royal Commission. Otherwise, we will just keep losing our veterans, and Defence will keep policing itself, which is what the problem is here. 20 years they've absolutely done nothing but bring shame upon themselves. But what throws me around even more is that you still have the insane Inspector-General sitting there, that you have not sacked him, because I can assure you there is enough reasons, I would think, in that report, let alone what has gone through the Royal Commission, that you haven't removed him and shown some leadership and said you're not going to tolerate this behaviour from one of the highest officers in our Defence Forces. You lack the courage to do so, and in the meantime you are still leaving veterans out there wondering or not whether to take their lives because of the Inspector General of the Australian Defence Force and the way it acts.